Well, welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. Now, I know I've said this before, but I really love helping people make their businesses work for them. And a lot of new business owners I talk with have worked hard to get their business up and running, and now they're ready to start scaling and growing. But it's a lot for one person to do. There's so much to do that it's impossible to do it by yourself. So people are starting to think about hiring someone or maybe several someones to help out, but they don't quite know where to start that hiring process. What do you do first? What kinds of things do you need to know? Can you talk to? So I asked my friend, Lillian Bullock, who's an HR specialist, and she's been doing some work for us as we grow. And I asked her to share some of her knowledge and expertise with you. She's going to be talking about some of the things you need to know, think about, and do when you start to bring people on and grow your team. So welcome, Lil.
Hi, how are you, Trudy?
Great to have you here. So maybe you could just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. What's your background? And maybe tell us a little bit about what the thing was that you found most challenging when you first made the switch to HR specialist.
Yes, sure thing. I've been working in HR for about 13 years now. I'm considered a generalist as well as an employee relations specialist. So I've been through a master's in business in human resource management. And from there, I've just developed a career in HR. So starting from the very bottom, like most people do, and then working your way up through to management. And in my last role, I was a people and culture manager. And prior to that, I was a people and culture advisor, which meant I was working within an aged care space doing mainly employee relations work with an aged care organisation.
Mm-hmm. So you've talked a little bit about starting from the bottom or starting from the ground up and working your way up. What was the biggest challenge that you faced in doing that?
Yes, sure. It was just learning basic HR processes. I found that, going to school was one thing, but actually going out and working was a different thing altogether. So the most important thing was getting the right employer, which I was most fortunate to have, and then learning the basics of HR from a practical point of view and best HR practice as well. So I basically started with recruitment. It was, HR 101, but it was learning the proper way to get the right people for a business. And it was something that I'd never done before. I was so used to people just dropping their resumes at the counter or looking at a sign outside a shop. And I always wondered what happened then. But within a wider organisation, you could see that there was a detailed process and there was a good way to do it. And the best way to do it was to look at particulars of the process, which I'll go through today, that'll help you get the right person for your business.
Yeah, and that's so important. And, and based on your 13 years of experience and sort of learning and understanding and then doing what you need to do it well. And also I can say from my perspective, with my background as a senior manager, if you get this process wrong, it can be so painful, and it's important to be able to get it right. But most small business owners, like I said, they don't know where to start. They haven't had the experience, and if they get it wrong, it actually can put their business at risk. So they're really often quite nervous to take on that first hire to bring somebody onto their team. So I'm going to just hand it over to you now, Lil, and if you just want to share some of your wisdom with us, that would be great. We'd be really appreciative of that.
Sure thing. Trudy, you did say it would be expensive for the business if they got it wrong. Just to let you know, it's your time, it's your money that you spend in hiring somebody. If you get it wrong, you've got to do it all over again, which means it is a cost to your business. So if you do it right from the word go, you look at it as a process to follow, then it's very easy to do. It just requires a little bit of preparation depending on your business, how in depth you go with the process. If you do that properly, then from then on, you'll have the right employee. And you've always got recourse if things do go wrong. So I'll just go through a number of tips easy tips for you to look at: how to get the process started, how to run through it, and then how to welcome your new employee to your business. So I'll start off with the hiring process. Number one, what sort of employee do you want and what will the new employee do? So let's start off with, what are your needs in your business? A simple document listing qualifications and experience you require from that potential employee, and a list of duties. So this could be quite a detailed position description, or it could be just a simple one-pager where you know exactly what you want, and that's something that you've got in writing to start off the process. Number two, very important, this is extremely important in today's environment: what's the correct pay rate? In Australia, we live in a highly complex industrial environment, and we have modern awards, we have enterprise bargaining agreements. It's so important to check your industry pay rates by accessing the right modern award. You can do this through the Fair Work Commission website or other websites. So all you need to do is Google search. You should be able to find the correct information there. Now, this is important because so many large Australian companies and small businesses within our environment have been inadvertently caught underpaying employees due to the complexity of interpreting awards and agreements. So it's not only bad for your public relations, but it also can result in significant fines. So if anything out of what I say to you today is important, this is the most important step, okay?
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to end up on the front page of the news.
No, and look, you know,
yeah.
It's been happening a lot recently, and it continues to happen. Small businesses, large businesses, cafes, etc., but they all get their names in the papers, and you don't want to do that to your business. It's not something that you want for your public relations and for the growth of your business. Next, we'll go into advertising. Look, there's a wide variety of websites that you can use to put up a simple job advertisement. You can do it on LinkedIn, on Seek, on Indeed, or through your own personal network, just by email saying, look, I'm looking for somebody with the following years of experience or qualifications. Can you help me find somebody? Now, a lot of these sites charge a fee, but your advertisement then is able to attract the most interested and competent candidates. And that's what you want. You want a bit of traction out there to attract people. And look, there's a lot of people looking out there for work at the moment. You might be inundated, but at least your ad is out there and it's attracting attention. I would put the ad out there for perhaps 2 to 3 weeks, and then start looking at number 4, which is shortlisting. Now, shortlisting is quite important because it involves looking through your applicants to get the best, and at the most 3 or 4 applicants that will suit your advertised position. Spend the time doing this. It is important because you want to get the right person for the role. And 3 or 4 at the most should be fine. If you might be inundated, but I still think it's worth shortlisting appropriately.
So, Lil, can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Let's say you're a busy business owner, a small business owner, and this is your first time you're doing this process, and you put an ad up, and you get like 200 applicants back. What can you do to help manage that in terms of the workload if you don't have time to do that yourself?
Okay, well, this is where it might be worth putting those dollars into, say, an organisation like Seek. The reason being is you can put your advertisement up, but you can also have questions put on that will help you shortlist those candidates. So you might say you must have the following qualification, or you must be able to drive a car, or you must have Australian working rights. So that'll actually work out for you online who's going to be applicable to that role and who's not. So a little bit of computer work, online help always helps in this case. I have been in a position where I have received 200 applicants, and all those shortlisting questions online have helped me significantly find the right person. It does require a little bit of time, but I still think it's worth time spending to get the right person. And also, you can also shorten your advertising time. Say, for instance, it is an administration job and there are a lot of administrators out there that are out of work. Make the ad for a week. Stop it straight away. That means you've got the really interested ones that have applied straight away, and then there's an end date and you don't take any more applications. So you might end up with 50 rather than 200 over a 3-week period of advertising.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So the next point for getting your employee is interviewing. So I'd make sure that you've created a list of interview questions that are relevant to the role and will give you the best idea of whether the interviewee is appropriate for the role. So you may include questions about their past experience, or include scenario type questions that reveal in-depth knowledge of how to handle a situation relevant to the role. They're fairly important because you can work out how a person responds in a particular situation. It's important to maybe have a dozen questions in an interview situation. You don't want to make it too long. Your panel may be you and another person that you trust that knows the role quite well. And also a scoring sheet is really important so that you can compare apples with apples. At the end of the day, you want to pick the right person. And it's important, very important in the Australian climate, that you do not ask questions that can be viewed as discriminatory. Otherwise, your candidates can come back and they can cause trouble for your organisation. So no personal questions, nothing about their personal life. It's all about the role and whether they are suitable for the role. And finally, make sure that the interviewee is aware that there may be a requirement for a pre-employment check as part of the recruitment process. So that's another issue that we look at, whether it might be a police check or it could be a visa check, to see if there's a person who's applied whose visa is restricted to a certain number of hours per week, or it might be a medical disclosure check as well. So it might be a job that you've got where you require heavy lifting. You need to know whether that person has a back injury or something that might preclude them from doing the role. Okay, so you've done your interviews, you've picked your top applicant. Now's the time to start reference checking. So I would get back in touch with the preferred candidate and get the contact details of 2 most recent referees, preferably supervisory ones. You don't want references from personal friends or people that they've worked with side by side. You want supervisors. And then what you do is you would ring up those referees and get an idea of what that applicant has worked like in the past. And then make your decision based on that. Look, if it hasn't worked out, then you go to the next applicant that was interviewed. I understand that people don't like doing reference checking, but I think it's a good thing to do just to get a good idea of what that person has worked like in the past in a similar organisation or a similar role.
So Lil, some questions about that then. So people, oftentimes when people are asked to be a referee, they don't like to say anything bad about the person, even if there was issues in the previous role that person had. So what might be a tactic or a way or some questions that people might be able to ask that might open up or make people more willing to say what was really happening?
Sure, it could be the what you're asking. You might say, have they got any weaknesses that you're aware of? You might say, has there been a situation where they have not worked well within a team? It depends on the quality of your questions in the reference checking. You do ask at the beginning that the referee understands this is a privacy issue and that the applicant might have access to those reference checks down the track. But I would look at the quality of your questions just to make sure that you get as honest an answer as possible. And if you're not getting what you want from a referee, I'd just go in depth more. Just say, look, could you explain further? Has there been an instance where they haven't worked well? You're talking about where they're working really well. I'd like to know where they haven't performed well. So it's about digging in deeper into what their performance or their behaviour might have been like in the past.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I always had a couple of questions. Like, I always want to know how they handle conflict.
That's right. That's one
Yeah,
of them. That's a very good one to ask, because a lot of work is about teamwork these days. It's a big word, that way you can always find out if there have been issues within a team. Whether they've worked appropriately or whether they've had differences of opinion about the work, or maybe personality differences.
yeah, for sure. And then the last thing I always like to ask is there anything that I need to know that I haven't asked?
Oh yes, that's a very second last question for me. Always, I could always read it verbatim off my list. Look, most people just say no, but sometimes they say, "Look, I definitely hire this person. They've worked really well," and that's sort of as like a clincher to me. You know that they haven't been giving you all just the rosy stuff. You know that they're very happy. Also, I ask them, would you employ or work with them again at the very end? And if they say yes, without a doubt, you know that you've got a good one there.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask too. Yeah.
So next, you've got your reference checks done. Making the offer. So next is ringing up the successful candidate, and then talking to them about whether they're interested in taking on the role, making sure you've got the right role there as well. Often people get lots of phone calls and they don't even know who they're speaking to. So just introduce yourself and your company. You've been interviewed with us. You're the preferred candidate. We're making you an offer. This will include details of the role again, the pay that is on offer, and negotiating a start date, because the successful applicant might have a notice period anywhere up to 4 weeks. Usually you'll know that at the interview time, but you just check that again. There might be a question about the pay. You might have to negotiate that salary a little bit, but that's usually for higher roles. If they're on a modern award, you stick to the rate that's on the modern award. And then just wait for their response. And then the next step is pre-employment checks. So I usually do this together. So pre-employment checks and the letter of appointment and contract usually go hand in hand for me. So I'll start with the pre-employment checks. It could be a police check. You just want to know that they've got a clean record, because you've got intellectual property you have to be worried about, or the fact that they might have had some sort of record that precludes them from working in a certain environment legally. A visa check. A lot of employees these days are on a visa in Australia. They might be restricted, which means they can only work a certain number of hours a week. So you've got a full-time job, you've picked a person with a restricted visa, you can't have them working for you because they can't do 38 hours a week, they can only do 20 a week. So that's another thing to consider. And also if you've got a physical job, maybe a medical condition disclosure statement, where they disclose any medical conditions they have that might preclude them from working in that role. Now that might actually stop the process, and you'll have to go back to the second candidate that you had chosen, number 2 in line. But look, all things considered, if all goes well, do those checks. Now, your letter of appointment might be a simple letter just outlining the role, how many hours per week, the rate, what industrial instrument they're working under, which modern award or the National Employment Standards. Also, it might say this letter of offer is subject to a satisfactory police record check if you've got a pre-employment check. So in case the check comes back and there's something on it that is not applicable or not valid for the role, you can say, well, look, the offer has been removed because your police record check has come back unsatisfactory for our role. So it could be a simple letter, or it could be a workplace agreement. So you might want to go online and check to see what there is in the way of that from the Fair Work Commission. But a letter of appointment is quite fine. Provide your PD with that as well, so that they can sign that as well.
So
position description. Going back to HR jargon. So provide them with that to sign off as well, and also make sure that there's room on the letter for them to sign that they agree to work under those conditions, and that will have their start date on it as well. So you've done all the paperwork, you've got back everything you need back from your employee, all the finance things such as your tax file number form, maybe a few personal details so that there's some contact in case there's an accident, or there's superannuation details, etc. Whatever suits your business. Although those things can be found online as well.